John Gottman is one of the top marriage researchers in the world. And he researched marriages of people by watching them inside of a lab. And he got so he could predict who was going to divorce with a very high degree of accuracy. And he boiled these behaviors down into 4 behaviors, and he calls them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And the more these occur, the more likely the couple is to be unhappy. Now, I like this because as a mentor, it helps me to explain and to define some behaviors to be aware of. And as a couple, the more you can recognize these and change them, the better shot you've got at being able to improve your communication. Now, I think a lot of couples, they want a better relationship. They just feel stuck and they don't know what to do. So recognizing these behaviors is the first start to be able to do that. Now, I think we all do these to some extent, but the more that we can get these, let's say, maybe not under control, but the more we can choose new behaviors, the better shot we've got at really building connection with our spouse. The first one is criticism. And I want to contrast that with a complaint. So a criticism is about attacking somebody's character. And it puts the other person down by insinuating that somehow they're below you in some way. So oftentimes they include judgments or all-encompassing statements like you always or you never. So let me give you an example of a criticism and then how to do the same thing as a complaint. So a criticism might be something like, I can't believe you didn't wash the dishes. You're so irresponsible. A complaint might be, I feel irritated when you don't do the dishes. Another criticism could be something like, pick up your towel. You always leave it on the floor. Versus a complaint would be, I feel like you don't respect me when you leave your towel on the floor. So complaints need to communicate, information, things that we don't like. Criticism is all about putting the other person down. When we're criticized, we often respond with defensiveness. So the second one is defensiveness. And defensiveness is not taking responsibility for our actions, or oftentimes it has a counter criticism to it. So it might be something like, hey, I washed the dishes last night, when are you going to clean up the kitchen? So I'm defending myself and then doing a counter criticism at that one. Or it might be something like, hey, I don't always leave my towel on the floor, and you don't always pick up your stuff. So it is defending and not taking responsibility for our actions. Contempt is one of the most dangerous. And contempt is really a lack of respect. If you are found in contempt of court, that means you didn't respect the court. So in some ways, it's the opposite of respect. It can be verbal, like replying with some kind of a sarcastic comment, like, oh, like you're so responsible. Or it can be nonverbal. It can be anything from shaking your head, rolling your eyes, or something that really shows a lack of respect for the other person. We've seen couples where they are so good at this and they're so good at being sarcastic, they can be real witty and they can be funny. So they think it's okay, but it's really tearing down their relationship because they're not feeling respected and taken seriously by their partner. Stonewalling is when one person just kind of checks out of an interaction. And, a severe example might be leaving the room, but you don't have to leave the room to stonewall. You can just kind of sit there, not respond, and just kind of check out. And it's kind of like talking to a stone wall. So someone's not responding at all. And it can look very peaceful because the arguments don't escalate. Someone just sits there and is quiet. And they kind of think inside, hey, if I'm just quiet, they have to go away. I just won't respond. But it's very damaging to a relationship. And it means that a lot of things don't get dealt with. And eventually that leads to resentment and disconnection. Now, I would contrast stonewalling with taking a time out. So research has shown that if you can just take a time out for 20 or 30 minutes when something starts to escalate because you're starting to feel all the emotions, that's a healthy thing, as long as you come back after 20, 30 minutes and actually talk about it. So time out is healthy. Stonewalling is not healthy. So as a mentor, being able to help a couple to recognize these behaviors is an important part of what we do. And I found that it's easier to see them in someone else than it is to see them in ourselves oftentimes. So when we first started mentoring, we read some of John Gottman's books. And it was helpful for us just to kind of put names to some of these behaviors. And then as we've explained them to couples, it helps them to be able to recognize their poor behaviors and allows them to make some better choices. So let me just sum up what they were again. There's criticism, which is putting your attacking character, putting somebody down. There's defensiveness, where we don't take responsibility for our actions and we defend them. There's contempt, where we're not treating the other person with respect. And finally, there's stonewalling, where we just kind of shut down when we don't deal with it, and we just can be very, very quiet. So these are 4 behaviors that the more couples engage in these, the more likely they are to have an unhappy marriage.